Are you ready to unlock the secrets to positive change? In this episode of The Art of Change, we're going to dive deep into the powerful techniques and strategies of motivational interviewing. So, discover how open ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarizing can transform lives. With real life examples and expert insights from Lorri Williams, get ready to master the art of MI. So, let's dive right in. Welcome to episode 3 of Motivational Interviewing. We're going to talk about using MI in practice. Now, this is going to vary different from what we've seen in previous episodes, because what we're going to do is talk about not just how therapy and the health industry uses motivational interviewing, but then how do we apply that into different organizations and into our coaching process with our different members to get the change we are looking for, but also to empower our members to develop into high trust culture environments and spread this capability across the entire organization. So again, today I have with me Lorri Williams, as we talked about in the previous episodes with her background. Lorri, quick synopsis on your background one more time.
Licensed clinical social worker, licensed addiction counselor, board certified neurofeedback, and ERYT 500 yoga teacher.
So jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So one of the things I think is key is, and we don't have to dive too deep into this, Lorri, but I think it's super helpful. What has been your history or your background in your personal life where you found you were on the receiving end of change talk versus now you're a practitioner of getting people to change talk? Can you dive a little bit into how you've experienced that at all?
Well, I am a human being and I have my own things that I have to work on. So for me, it's been trying to see what is the need, or the desire. So I'm tired of being tired. And then do I have the ability to change? What are the reasons that I have to change? And then why do I need to change?
Yeah. So I think that's really, the reason why I bring that up is because sometimes we view people who have the training that you have and the background, and we forget that those individuals are human beings as well. And we all go through obstacles. We all go through challenges. And sometimes we all have a challenge to do that self-reflection and dive deeper into our change. We think, okay, it's really easy looking from the outside in, this needs to happen. But we need to, that's what this kind of dives into the empathy of understanding. It's harder to see ourselves and see the change than looking at somebody else and say, ooh, they probably need to adjust this, right?
Right.
And so really that's when we're talking about that building that empathy for your members dives deeper, because it's understanding they may not recognize or see that, and we have to build to that. And so that's kind of where we're going to go today, is talking about some of these stories and successes with motivational interviewing. What I want to dive first into, Lorri, is understanding, can you give, without going into obviously super details of previous clients you've had, but where have you seen, for example, the greatest successes in dealing with motivational interviewing? As we know, the background of motivational interviewing was built in the 1980s for individuals that have substance abuse and addiction. And of course, this can apply, hence why we're doing this podcast, is this can apply across the board for multiple organizations. But in building it with those individuals, give us a good example, I guess, of where motivational interviewing for you was able to be so successful with somebody who had to battle addiction.
So with addiction, a lot of times it does work and it meets the need for whatever that client is trying to do or avoid or stop, like the feeling, the emotion, the pain. And it's just now there's other things getting in the way. So now I'm getting in trouble, or now, my wife is upset with me, or my kids don't want to be around me, or they took my children. So it's just now that there's consequences that are coming from this behavior that, was working until it doesn't work. So part of me, there's going to be some awareness of that person, like this isn't working anymore, but it still works. So there's that ambivalence that is so big in addiction, and especially people who are just coming in to treatment, especially if they're court mandated. That part of me does want to quit, but part of me doesn't want to quit. Like, it's been my whole life. I've done it my whole life. All my friends, everything, my whole entire existence has revolved around this one thing. And even though it's painful and I don't want to do it anymore, and I'm tired and I want my kids. So working with that ambivalence is huge in the beginning with people. just trying to pick out little pieces of why they do want to change and what is that goal and how can we find a way to get that same relief or that painkiller without this specific substance anymore.
Right. So let's tie that into outside of addiction. So when we talk about, let's say we have an organization that hires a member, and let's say it's going really great for a couple of weeks, and then they start seeing a decline in, let's say, performance, right? In their whatever the job might be. And so in that context, right, they may not see the issue, but on top of that, one, how do you think that people can apply that to let's say non-addiction issues, but like using it for the organization they work for to maybe get the individual to improvement? So for example, maybe somebody got hired to do a job that they thought they were going to be great at doing, and then all of a sudden it's just not their cup of tea. It's not their forte. But we don't want to lose sight in, we already hired this person. We invested into this person that we think they're going to be great for the company. But now we need to get them to the right change talk. How do we get them to, number one, how do we get to finding what's the right change we're looking for, and then helping them get to the position of them developing that idea of the change in the first place on their end?
I think a lot of times it has to do with figuring out what is the goal, what's the main goal, what isn't working, what is working, how else could we get there if this particular person isn't getting there this way? Are there other ways that we could get there? And what's the goal that we want to meet?
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so then that makes me think about this. So why do you think people are so not able to help develop their people to that change? Why do you think people tend to navigate or gravitate towards just directing? Like, you will change this. You will be better at this. Otherwise, you're going to see these repercussions, right? Because one of the things I've seen across organizations across the board is members always say they have this fear of getting fired. They don't want to lose their income. They don't want to lose their position. But at that same token, there's a reason why their leadership is questioning them in the first place. But we need that's two changes, right? One, change in middle management of, do you want to create an environment that lives in fear? But two, how do we help those middle managers understand it's not about creating the fear environment? It's helping you have that empathy to develop those individuals, dive deeper, and then really help them succeed where, we found value. We knew this person was a good fit for this position. So let's help them get to that position where they succeed.
Well, speaking from a place of fear, the brain does not operate well in a place of fear because you're in that reptilian brain, that fight or flight, and there's no room for creativity, for expansion, for like free association of thought, like nothing like that. You're just kind of surviving and going through the motions and getting through it. So a lot of people aren't going to be able to operate in a place where they can grow and change and get better if they're in a state of fear all the time.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. That state of fear, it really gets into that. So, okay, so then one, what are your thoughts? How do we get people, how do we as managers not put people in that fear state? Or two, if they get to that, how do we help get them out of that?
I think it's really important for managers to start getting curious rather than judgy, coming from that place of curiosity and wanting to know why. So that really does help with empathy, especially if you can kind of learn from a person, like why they're operating that way or why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I think of it when my experience in the military time of, we're such a hierarchy organization, which is very understandable why the military operates that way. But a lot of it is a lot of, they call it progressive discipline, but it's like fear of discipline, fear of punishment. If you do this, you're going to get disciplined. And if you continue to do this action, you're going to get further discipline. And if we apply that same methodology in organization, all that stems into is fear of loss of job, fear of coming to work and being criticized, fear of being the judgment, fear of people not liking you, depending on what that, the person's real care of interest is. And so really, the way I look at it is those high trust culture environments, they can benefit from motivational interviewing because one, the first principle is that expressing empathy. And I think that's so crucial in any organization or any relationship we have. And it's really understanding how do we get to that empathy of that individual? Because one, we don't know what they're going through.
Right.
And so how do you really,
Connect.
say it again?
Connect with that person.
Because everything is about relationships. I don't care if you're the CEO of a company and you have the lowest level person. When people at the lowest level feel connection to that CEO, they feel value.
They're going to want to work harder for that person.
Right. And so if that CEO, for example, I'll go into this fact. Most upper management think the way to solve things is to throw money at the problem, right? Let's pay them better. Let's give them a bonus. 95% of employees have stated through a Harvard study that they would take a lower paying job if they felt more valued in their organizations. So instead of thinking, well, the idea is let's give them a pay increase. Sure, we all love to get paid better, but that's not solving the root problem. That's just curing the symptom. And I can relate that to the addiction piece that you deal with all the time, because let's say they're using a substance. It's a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. It's just solving the symptom.
Yeah.
And so let's relate that to the organization. If we, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to solve the symptom, I'm going to give you a pay raise, dive deeper.
Right.
And how we do that is by expressing that empathy, getting into that reflective, right, the root cause, and then doing that reflective listening that then drives us into that motivating of that self-talk that gets them to the change. And at the end of the day, it's not our job to solve people's problems, but it is our job to help them feel empowered that we care.
And safe. I think creating a culture of safety for people to feel like they can come to the supervisor or the boss about things that they're going through, especially if they're going through something that shouldn't be happening.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point when you're talking about safe environment, right? I want to drive to work every day excited to go to my work. And it doesn't have to be that I'm excited about the job I'm doing, but maybe I'm excited because I like the people I work with. We all have the same in common ground of we want to move forward. I applied for this company for a reason, whether it was just to get a paycheck or I believe in what the company is producing. But what we don't want to do as an organization is make them or drive them to where they lose that original passion of why they got here in the first place.
Right.
And that safe environment is key. The empathy that we give them as supervisors. And I think the big thing, which we'll talk in another podcast about leadership, but leadership is not about, praising the good all the time, right? I think effective leaders understand how to take lower performing individuals and bring them to their highest capability.
Yeah.
Right. And so if as leaders, and those that are on this, podcast listening as a leader, how are you empowering your people to get to their best level that they can do? And I think it's key when I say this also to point out, not every day is going to be at your top performance. So it's also having that understanding that we can't drive people to always be at the top. They will break. Having that empathy, again, comes right into they had a poor performing day, but maybe that poor performing day was a bad day, but that's still higher than their, previous 2 years, whatever it could be. And so it's really getting into these techniques. Really, if we can see across the board, that is how we create these high trust culture environments that we're really talking about.
Yeah, where people want to be.
Yeah. Where do I want to be every day? And if I don't want to be at your organization every day, I'm not going to bring value to your organization. I'm probably not going to be worried about taking care of the customer, because at the end of the day, I just want to, whether it's customer service, I just want to get off the call, right? Or I don't want to sell your merchandise. I'm literally just going to scan a tag and move on, right? But if I believe in the quality of the product, because I also know that the company is providing me quality as an individual for being there, I get that safe space. I get people that care about me, and we all create an environment where we want everything to progress in a positive light.
Right.
And I think that's a super crucial piece. So I think that's a really good example of what we're talking about here with understanding how motivational interviewing is really driving us to really succeed and beyond just addiction, but all the different ways that we want to be in an organization to have a safe place for people to really move forward with a company. So on that note, that ends for episode 3 for us. I want to thank Lorri for being here again, for talking about motivational interviewing and diving into these success stories. We could not do this series without you, Lorri. I'm gonna use you again for future episodes. But thank you for your time, and everybody, we will see you for episode 4. We're really going to dive deep into challenges and critiques for motivational interviewing. interviewing, excuse me. It's not a perfect system, but it's really important for us to dive into those criticism and critiques because those are the things that might cause some resistance. And guess what? Those resistance pieces are the things we can use with motivational interviewing to get people from resistance to adapting to using these type of techniques. So thank you for tuning in to the next series or the next episode, and we will see you next time.